Okay, I find this actually a very interesting section. It's called legal descriptions, but what we're talking about is when we're describing where a piece of property is, and for instance, how big the property is, there's actually very legal descriptions, and there's a lot of very interesting history as to why they use different systems in different areas. And we're going to show you just what the basics are of this. And basically these are used primarily when you're selling property, but if you think about it, if you're designing new properties, like new buildings and things, you do need to understand the legal description for the property you're working on. In the United States, we have 3 different systems. The first one is metes and bounds. It's the original 13 states, so original 13 states, plus these here. There's also the rectangular survey system, which is for the other 30 states. Lot and block is used in conjunction with either of these. So everyone uses either metes and bounds for those states or rectangular, and then everyone then uses lots and blocks to further describe what we're talking about. Metes and bounds identifies a property by describing the shape and boundary dimensions of the unit. You're going to have to show that you can do this on your knowledge check when you finish this. So you should take notes. We're going to use a similar thing that we've used in Principles of Engineering and probably in a couple of others, talking about bearings. I know we talked about this in pre-cal also this year. A mete is a boundary described by a distance and a direction. So that's a vector, distance and direction, between property corners. First, you need to know the direction. North, 30 degrees west. Always think, start here, go this far in this direction. Let me say that again. Start here, go this far in this direction. You may want to rewind that and write that part down. And then this is how far you go. A bound is actually the boundary line, and it's usually something physical. For instance, along the stone wall at the edge of Isaac Poacher's property. Can you see a problem with this? Well, what if the stone wall falls down over 100 years? Often they use rivers and say along the edge of the river. But even rivers change course over time. You could, in fact, gain acres and acres of land this way or lose it when you use this bound system. And then we also need a point of beginning. That's the corner of the property that we're describing. So for instance, a description might be like this. From the point of bound, whatever that place is, proceed north 65 degrees 35 minutes east. This 35 minutes is just part of this. Instead of going 65.124, this is how they write it. You don't have to convert, so don't worry about that part. Along said right-of-way line on State Road number 1, a distance of 120 feet. Basically, it's telling us directions and descriptions. You'd have to have a map of this to tell exactly where that is. If you notice, this is what was used in the original 13 colonies plus that other list of states. And this actually goes back very historical. Metes and bounds were originally used in these kind of units. And here's an example. Today, the lengths are typically given in feet, though this is originally what it was. The bearing is a deviation measured in degrees. And we just talked about this a little bit. Start at south, go this many degrees to the west. This is how they further subdivide it up. You don't really need to know that part for what we're going to do. But here's how you do it. You do need to know this for your knowledge check. Start at north, go 25 degrees and a little bit toward the east. Start at north, go 25 degrees. Halfway would be 45 degrees, right? So 25 is about there, toward the east. Let's do another one. Start at south, go 22 degrees, so that's 45, 22 is about halfway here, toward the west. From our metes example, if we wanted to follow this, we'd start at our point of beginning. This might be the cross of 2 roads. We'd start and go 65 degrees from north toward the east, and we go out that direction 120 feet. Then our description would continue. Thence go north 12 degrees west for this distance. So we'd start, put another little compass here. North 12 degrees west would be about here. And we go 67 degrees, 67 feet. We continue these descriptions around the whole property. Basically, this is the old way of doing it. You need a survey team to really lay this out. But it wasn't hard for people to do with very little technology. This is why it was originally done this way. Then Thomas Jefferson came up with this rectangular system. Everything is in principal meridians and baselines. And this is how the whole globe is lined up. These things are called meridians, right? And then that's what everything is labeled against. So here, these are principal meridians going this way, north and south. These are range lines. Principal meridian, range lines. We have a range line every 6 miles. Township lines go horizontal or east-west, and they're laid out every 6 miles. Remember, this was called rectangular. You should be able to see why. And then we number them. This is Township 1, right here and right here. Township 1. Township 1 north. Township 1 south. Then this is Township 2 north. So starting at the township line, I go 2 lines up to get to 2, or I go 2 lines down to get to 2 south. Then starting at the prime meridian, this is row 1 east and row 2 east, and so on in the west. For instance, see if it's going to give us this description. This is Township 1 north, row 1 east. Now within this square, they now count out and divide this up into 36 little blocks, which they call sections. Each township changed into 36 sections. They start here in this corner, which I'm not positive why they start there, but they always start in this corner here, and it zigzags back and forth going down, always, ending with 36. So let's say that I now know I'm in Township 1 north, row 1 east, section 15. We now blow that section up again and divide it into blocks that are 1 square mile or 640 acres. We can divide it into sections, the half section, quarter section, and so on, going down into smaller and smaller sections. Each section has a name, and it's based off of the quadrants again. This is the northeast quarter. I might divide a northeast quarter into a west half and an east half, or a north half and a south half. So for instance, this is the north half of the southwest quarter. Or I could divide the quarter into quarters. So for instance, this is the southeast quarter of the northeast quarter of the whole thing. I know you may need to stop and think about this for a minute, pause the video. You're going to have to do this on the knowledge check. Here's an example where you can see an aerial view and you can clearly see this has been laid out in a rectangular system and the property's been sold this way. Why do you think they're all round like this? Well, it's because it's easy to water in a round section. I put a post down here in the center, I pull my water system out like that, and then the water system slowly rotates around the entire property to water that part. So we can see different meridians. For instance, this is the second principal meridian, third principal meridian, the baseline that everything is measured off of. Each state has a baseline and has at least one meridian that they measure all of their information off of. So now let's do an example. Township 1 south, range 1 east, third prime meridian. So this is our prime meridian here. Township 1 south is this row, range 1 east. That's this square here. Now I want to go from that one to section 25. You'll do this on your knowledge check too. Circle this one on your knowledge check if this was the example. And then from here, I'd go to section 25. It always starts in this corner, and it numbers going down like this. So we're looking at section 25 is right there. Now we further divide this one down to do this. Southwest, south half of northwest quarter. Here's our quarters. That's the northwest quarter. So that's this northwest quarter. And now I need the south half of that quarter. So I'm talking about the south half here of the northwest quarter. That's the piece of property we're talking about. Lots and blocks further divide stuff even smaller. This is how we get like a block in a subdivision or a lot in a subdivision. For instance, if I'm looking at this outline of a subdivision, we've already gotten to this square here. Now this would be lot 34 on this block. That's it.